Shalom, Kahala Yahweh, Bashem El Shai, Bashem Dash. Double honors my teachers, the apostles and elders of the great millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect, with the house of David reborn again in this generation. And Shalom to the 130 Yasharallah, who today are known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, who before losing our true heritage, we were known as, and still are, the true Hebrew Israelites of the Holy Bible. In today's lesson, I'm going to go into a record of a meeting from 1952 regarding a speech that an Amalekite made to an Amalekite conference, I guess you could say. But when I say Amalekite, I'm talking about the so-called Jewish people, or the people who are in the land of Israel today, who refer to themselves as the Israeli, which they are not. They are the biblical Edomites, right? The adversaries of the true biblical Israelites, or the true biblical Jews, which again today are the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, and anybody whose father's lineage goes back to that bloodline. Now, that being said, let's go and read this. This is Psalm 64:8. So they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away. Now, this is ultimately talking about the wicked of the world, okay? And you got to understand, it's very simple mindset when you consider it in this manner. Out of all the people in the world, everybody falls into three categories. The sons of God, that would be the Israelites, the Negro, Latino, Native Americans, and anybody whose father's lineage goes back to that bloodline. The sons of men, those are the other 16 nations in the world, the people like the Chinese, Japanese, Egyptians, the Persians, Armenians, and so on. And then you got the sons of the wicked, right? The sons of Satan. Those would be the Edomites, okay? Or who you would refer to today as the so-called Caucasian race, or the Israeli race, because again, those are the same people. Those two races are actually Edomites. But they separated a long time ago, around 1200 AD, when they started to come out of the Caucasus Mountains. Actually, before that, right? Amalek, the so-called Israelis, actually came out of the Caucasus Mountains, but settled in the steppes of the Caucasus Mountains there in modern-day Ukraine, or what it was called back in the day, Khazaria. Later on, the rest of the Edomites started to come out of the Caucasus Mountains, and people refer to them as the Caucasians, right? And this is also where you get the white slavery periods from, where you got a lot of these Edomites that had come out of the Caucasus Mountains, and they basically became indentured servants, and they were sold into slavery around the world. But that quickly changed. Esau came up in society, eventually ended up taking over Europe and then orchestrated or brought forth the Renaissance, which ultimately means rebirth. The rebirth of what? The rebirth of their empire, which they had lost. Okay, remember, the Edomites, they had taken over and built up Rome to what it was famous for, or at least what it's been glamorized for being famous for. That was basically the Edomites. Now, eventually, the Edomites had lost power in Rome, and they fled up to the Caucasus Mountains, and they stayed there for roughly 1,000 years, where they basically, reverted to a baser people. And then after that, like I said, they came out of the Caucasus Mountains, known as the Caucasian and the Khazarians. Now, that being said, as it tells you in the scripture here, that the wicked, who are the children of Satan, the Edomites, that the Lord would ultimately make these devils tell on themselves. Okay, and that's what we're seeing in all the information that is coming out. Now, I came across this article, that's what I'm going to call it, but it's basically a recording. It tells you right here, it says, speech of Rabbi Emanuel Rabinovich. The following is a speech of Rabbi Emanuel Rabinovich before a special meeting of the Emergency Council of European Rabbis in Budapest, Hungary, January 12th, 1952. Now, this actually comes from a CIA archive. Now, ultimately, it was unredacted and released to the public. And let's go ahead. What this is actually going to talk about is the war that is being waged right now, that we're living through, and we're seeing the repercussions of what's going around the world. You see, right now the Lord is doing a mighty work in the earth, where he is bringing down these Edomites out of power. And how is he doing that? Well, let's read real quick. This is Isaiah 19:2. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight every one against his brother, and every one against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. When it says Egyptian versus against Egyptian here, this is ultimately talking about the modern day Egyptian. When Isaiah was shown the vision of the end times, where he had seen the rulers of the world, he had no idea that they were going to be called Americans or Caucasians and Israelis. He just simply referred to them as the known power structure of his time, which would be the Egyptians. Okay? So this is why he referred to the end time rulers as Egyptians. So in this case, Isaiah, seeing that the rulers at the end of the age that we are currently living through right now, that they would be infighting against themselves. Okay? And that is ultimately what this is. This article, this of a speech, is actually revealing. Like I said, this here shows you what Amalek, the so-called Jewish people, have planned specifically for the rest of the Caucasian race. Okay? Though they are the same people, Amalek at the very top is the top tribe of Edom. And they are so wicked that though they know that they're all related, because again, trust me, the Amalekites at the very top, they know that they're the tribe of Esau. They know that they descend from Cain's lineage that ultimately came back as Esau in the reincarnation. They understand this, and they understand the so-called Caucasians are Edom. They admit it, right? There's famous videos that you go on right now go on X and hear rabbis confess that they know America is Edom. And the funny thing is that a lot of the American Edomites and also Edomites around the world they believe that the Israelis are Edom. Well, they're both right. They're both Edom, and they're both right now going to war with each other. And there's a famous idiom that goes, when two elephants are fighting, it's the grass that gets trampled beneath their feet. And that's ultimately what the world is right now. You have the two elephants, which is basically the Israelis, right? The tribe of Amalek, of the nation of Edom, versus the Idumeans of the nation of Edom, the so-called Caucasian race, right? They are fighting against each other. And the rest of the inhabitants of the world, we are represented by the grass and that idiom. Okay? Just look at what's going on to the children of Ishmael, right? There in Palestine and also in Lebanon. In fact, and then look all around the world, from the poisoning of the food, the poisoning of the air, the sea, the rivers, medicine the profession of medicine has been corrupted. The economy has been corrupted. The whole earth is defiled, and it is at the hands of the Edomite which has caused it. So, that being said, Akim, I've gone ahead and waxed poetically for a little bit. Let me go ahead and let's read this article. Now I'm just going to go read through it. And it's pretty much reiterates the same concepts as what is found in the Albert Pike Three World War letter that he wrote to the Italian politician Giuseppe Mazzini. But let's go and hear what Rabbi Emanuel Rabinovich, the Amalekite Edomite, has to say. It says, "Greetings, my children. You have been called here to recapitulate the principal steps of our new program. As you know, we had hoped to have 20 years between wars to consolidate the great gains which we made from World War II.
but our increasing numbers in certain vital areas is arousing opposition to us, and we must now work with every means at our disposal to precipitate World War III within 5 years, the goal for which we have striven so concertedly for 3,000 years is at last within our reach, and because its fulfillment is so apparent, it behooves us to increase our efforts and our caution tenfold. I can safely promise you that before 10 years have passed, our race will take its rightful place in the world, with every Jew a king and every Gentile a slave. And then applause from the gathering. So check this out. You see, when I said that the top Amalekites know that they're, of the tribe of Edom, I wasn't lying, right? There's proof and, documents and testimony that show that they admit that they are the Edomites. However, this does not preclude the fact that they have lied to their own people. You see, many of the Israelis actually believe they are the chosen people. Okay, and this is why you see such hubris amongst those people, the gall of them, the wickedness that they show from being in that perceived position of power, that they are the chosen and that this world will ultimately, be given to them, and that the rest of the nations will go into slavery. Now, one thing I'd like to mention or bring up is an allegory that we've all know about, where you have a child who is born with means, right? He's born to rich parents that have substance. And these parents, you've all heard about how they'll have children, and those children will grow up spoiled. And they'll grow up to be horrible people who have no understanding of what it is to work for, what they have, or how to be good people. They tend to be the psychopaths, the spoiled brats, right? The trust fund babies that everybody, knows are just simply deplorable people. That is Edom in a nutshell, right? They did not go through the punishments, the captivities that the true Israelites did, which, again, when you look at the Israelites' plights, the plights of the Negro, Latino, Native Americans, we are akin to the idiom of the child who is born of high stock and who is the inheritor, or should I say the heir, of vast fortunes and power, but is brought up in a humble and strict path, right? This is basically your Cinderella stories, right? The child grows up thinking that they're slaves or they're nothing, and then when they grow up and they become of age, they find out that they're royalty or they're rich or that type of stuff, and then these people go on to have a good future because they went through the hardships. They built up that character. They have the wherewithal to understand good and evil. That would be your Negro, Latino, Native American, and anybody else's whose father's lineage goes back to that bloodline. Okay, and that's because the Israelites, after being selected, after the long road of selective breeding and selecting one son over the other that the Lord has done, as he has says, right, with great work has he made his plant perfect. Us Israelites, the Negro, Latino, Native Americans, we are that perfected plant that the Lord has worked so hard for. Well, like I said, once the Lord told our forefather Jacob that he was the chosen, and that ultimately he was given the blessings, and that all his sons would receive, or should I say all his seeds would receive the blessing that was promised to Abraham, Isaac, and also on to Jacob, whom God changed his name to Israel, or should I say Yasharallah, which is Hebrew for he is, or he prince power, right? That we are the sons of God, the princes of the power, the princes of God. Okay? Well, that's who we are, and the character of the spoiled trust fund baby, that's who these Amalekites are. This is why they speak so wickedly regarding oppression, regarding slavery, right? See, yes, what they're saying here is true, that the other nations will go into captivity and serve the Lord and the Israelites and build up heaven upon earth. But the way that these devils go about it, they believe that they already got it in the bag. And this is why you're seeing such, like I said, deplorable behavior from them. Let's continue. You remember the success of our propaganda campaign during the 1930s, which aroused anti-American passions in Germany. At the same time, we were arousing anti-German passions in America. A campaign which culminated in the Second World War. A similar propaganda campaign is now being waged intensively throughout the world. A war fever is being worked up in Russia by an incessant anti-American barrage, while a nationwide anti-communist scare is sweeping America. Remember when those Rocky movies came out with him fighting against Drago, and you had the Cold War, right? America versus Russia, and basically America versus the communism, all the way back in the Cuba Missile Crisis. All that was Amalek orchestrating, his world domination, right? His war, his secret war against his brother, the fellow Caucasian, right? The so-called American Edomites. Continuing. This campaign is forcing all of the smaller nations to choose between the partnership of Russia or an alliance with the United States. Our most pressing problem at the moment is to inflame the lagging militaristic spirit of the Americans. The failure, and by the way, what he means by this is, and I know it's hard for a lot of the younger Akim out there to understand this, but America wasn't always a warlike country, right? Though it had it at its core and its foundation, America, at least in World War I and also World War II, was very reluctant to get into these wars. Okay, diplomacy was always sought after, but as we all know through history, you had Amalekite agents within the westernized powers, the other Edomite countries, pushing them into war. Right? Just look at how they corrupted and Winston Churchill, who basically got the English people and then also the American people later to go to war to fulfill Amalek's plans. Okay? Well, like I said, the America of today, the industrial military complex that exists, wasn't a normal thing. Yes, America wasn't to be fucked with, but at the same time, they didn't envelop their entire personality around their military. Again, what America has grown into is the golem of Amalek, right? Basically the monstrosity that Amalek has built, so that way these Amalekites can use America as its whipping stick around the world. This is why Amalek has infiltrated all the levers of power within the United States and also around all the westernized, and really around all the world, right? Mexico, Ukraine, and all that stuff. Let's continue. The failure of the Universal Military Training Act was a great setback to our plans, but we are assured that a suitable measure will be rushed through Congress immediately after the 1952 elections. The Russian as well as the Asiatic people are well under control and offer no objections to war. So what he's talking about here is, you got to remember, the communist revolutions that took place in Russia and then later in China, they were all orchestrated by Amalek. And Amalek, he pretty much has bribed and runs these nations secretly, even till today. This is why Russia and China have not attacked, and because they're basically obedient dogs of Amalek. Okay, and this is why they're playing the bad guy role. However, they're already within the New World Order system that Amalek has set up. The social credit system in China, the universal healthcare education system in Russia. All these things are all going to be parts of the new incoming New World Order, right? The BRICS nations, all that stuff. It seems like it's good. It seems like it's, has value. But ultimately, this is the New World Order system that Amalek, and really these Edomites that have sold out to Amalek,
want to push the entire world too. But right now they're being presented as the bad guys. So that way the westernized powers, as you're going to read here, as you're going to hear here, I should say, are going to prevail. Let's continue. But we must wait to secure Americans. This we hope to do with the issue of anti-Semitism, which works so well in uniting the Americans against Germany. We are counting heavily on reports of anti-Semitic outrage in Russia to whip up indignation in the United States and produce a front of solidarity against the Soviet power. Simultaneously, to demonstrate to Americans the reality of anti-Semitism, we will advance through news sources large sums of money to outspoken anti-Semitic elements. So a lot of these white power and these, people who push all this anti-Semitic rhetoric. So even within our own groups, Akim, you got sellouts like the IUIC and One Body and Yahweh Shai for sure. These are agents that got bought out by Amalek that are pushing anti-Semitic rhetoric, okay, which Amalek then points to and says, hey, look at those black Hebrew Israelites. They're dangerous. They're evil. They're anti-Semitic, right? That's the whole, lone shooter that somehow gets tied back to the Hebrew Israelites or the black Hebrew Israelite movement. That's where all that comes from. It's Amalek making secret attacks upon this movement of ours, right, against the Lord. This is why the Lord said that he would have a perpetual war against Amalek, right? Because these devils are always trying to fight against the Lord. This is why the whole world right now that is controlled by these Amalekites, which for the most part is the majority of the world, is everything that they push is against God. From the food, the rituals, the movies, the culture. But let's get back to this article. I don't want to digress too much. We will advance through news sources large sums of money to outspoken anti-Semitic elements in America to increase their effectiveness, and we shall stage anti-Semitic outbreaks. Why do you think you find so many of these people painting swastikas or getting caught putting up fake claims or saying that they've been harassed because they were Jewish people? Well, because of this. They are working in a concerted effort to overthrow the world for the most part, namely the American and westernized Edomites. Continuing, anti-Semitic outbreaks in several of their largest cities. This will serve the double purpose of exposing reactionary sectors in America, which then can be silenced, and of wielding the United States into a devoted anti-Russian unit. And that's already happened. This is why everybody is now talking about, Russia, Putin, election interference, and all this type of shit, because right now they're basically, it's like that one devil on the schoolyard who basically puts bullies against each other by saying, oh, did you hear what he said about your mama? Oh, did you hear what they said about your sister? Like that type of shit. That's ultimately what Amalek does. Let's get this scripture real quick, Akim. Psalms 55 and 21. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords. These Amalekites are incredibly good orators, and they can spin a large and intricate web of lies to make you believe that they are on your side. This is why they are always at the forefront of social, cultural movements. Okay, they pretend to be your friend, but at the same time, they're stabbing you in the back. Okay, this is something that is very well known by these Amalekites. Okay, so this is how they get the people to do their will, basically, right? Because nobody wants to be called anti-Semitic. Which it's funny because now the Lord has broken that scepter, that rod, and that is no longer working. In fact, a lot of these westernized Edomites are actually seen being called anti-Semitism as a badge of honor. Let's continue. Within 5 years, this program will achieve its objective
the Third World War, which will surpass the destruction all previous contests. Israel, of course, will remain neutral, and when both sides are devastated and exhausted, we will arbitrate, sending our control commissions into all wrecked countries, right? The UN, basically, right? The UN peacekeepers. This war will end for all times our struggle against the Gentiles. We will openly reveal our identity with the races of Asia and Africa. I can state with assurance that the last generations of white children is now being born. Our control commissions will, in the interest of peace and wiping out interracial tensions, forbid the whites to mate with whites. The white women must cohabit with members of the dark races and white men with dark women. Thus the white race will disappear, for mixing the dark with the white means the end of the white man. Now, that's not true. You see, because right here where it says the white man with the dark woman, those children that come out would be of the father's seed lines. Hence, they would basically be dark Edomites. Okay? Continuing. And our most dangerous enemy will become only a memory. We shall embark upon an era of 10,000 years of peace and plenty. The Pax Judaica, which Pax is Latin for peace, the peace of Judaica. This is fucking hilarious because this shows you that these are the pagan Romans, man. Because Pax Judaica is a play on an old Roman saying, Pax Romanica, basically the Roman peace, right? That through their force and destruction of all the nations around, that they were able to bring the world together and have peace that was orchestrated through them, the Pax Romanica, right? But here you have Amalek saying that through their fucking deception, they're going to bring forward the Pax Judaica, right? Look at the fucking gall of these devils. And our race will rule undisputed over the world. Our superior intelligence will easily enable us to obtain mastery over the world of dark peoples. You see that, Akim? So though these Amalekites are fighting against their brothers, the Caucasians, the American westernized Edomites, they still don't care about the rest of the nations. As it says here, the dark nations, right? That's talking about the Negro, Latinos, Native Americans, right? They also plan to have us under subjection. They plan to have all the third world and, minorities, as they call us, which is fucking hilarious because we're the majority. They plan to have us as perpetual slaves. Continuing. Question from gathering. They ask, Rabbi Rabinovich, what about various religions after World War III, after the Third World War? Rabinovich responds, there will be no more religions. Not only would the existence of a priest class remain a consistent danger to our rule, but belief in an afterlife would give spiritual strength to irreconcilable elements in many countries and enable them to resist us. We will, however, retain the rituals and customs of Judaism as the mark of our hereditary ruling caste, strengthening our racial laws so that no Jew will be, I'm going to correct this, so that no Edomite will be allowed to marry outside of our race, nor will any stranger be accepted by us. This is why over in Ukraine they're destroying churches. Why in Russia they've destroyed. Well, actually not Russia. China, they've destroyed churches there. Pretty much anywhere where Amalek is at, he's destroying churches, right? In houses of worship, like mosques and things like that, because he ultimately doesn't want anybody to believe in any higher power because of what we just read. Continuing. We may have to repeat the grim days of World War II, when we were forced to let the Hitlerites bandits sacrifice some of our people. in order that we may have adequate documentation and witnesses to legally justify our trials and execution of the leaders of America and Russia as war criminals. After we have dictated the peace, I am sure you will need little preparation for such a duty, for sacrifice has always been the watchword of our people. Now notice this, right? Remember how they did Hitler, right? Even though Hitler was their man, right? Well, they're planning on doing the same thing to the presidents, to the prime ministers, to all the people of power who are not Amalekites. These devils have their head on the chopping board too, but they're just going to be eaten last. Continuing. And the death of a few thousand Amalekites or Edomites in exchange for world leadership is indeed a small price to pay. To convince you of the certainty that leadership, let me point out to you how we have turned all the inventions of the white man, Edomite, into weapons against him. His printing presses and radios are the mouthpieces of our desires, and his heavy industry manufactures the instruments which he sends out to arm Asia and Africa against him. Our interest in Washington are greatly extending the Point 4 program for developing industry in backwards areas of the world, right? So you ever wonder why manufacturing was shipped to China, or India is where the technical systems went, or basically, like it says, right, manufacturing was shipped out of America. This is why. It's all part of Amalek's plan to take down the rest of the Edomites. So that after the industrial plants and cities of Europe and America are destroyed by atomic warfare, the whites can offer no resistance against the large masses of the dark races, who will maintain an unchallenged technological superiority. And so, with the vision of world victory before you, go back to your countries and intensify your good work until that approaching day when Israel, the Amalekites, the Edomites, will reveal herself in all her glorious destiny as the light of the world. So there you go, Akim. That right there is what Amalek has planned, not only for the world at large, but also for his fellow brother, the other Edomites of his own nations. So let's go and read this. This is Matthew 12 and 26. And if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How shall then his kingdom stand? And you see right here, the Lord made it very clear how Satan, right? Satan being represented on earth by these Edomites who are his children, right? How can he be taken out of power? Well, by him fighting within himself. This is the same way that the Lord took us Israelites down and got us out of the land of Israel. He made us fight between ourselves. This is why there was rivalry between the northern and southern kingdom, which lasted for a very long time, up until recent decades, when the Lord has started to close the breach between our people, the Negro, Latino, Native Americans. Well, now the Lord is doing that same thing to the Edomites. He's starting to put a division between them. And yes, the Amalekites are the physical instrument and that are orchestrating it, but it's all by the will of the Lord. And why is that? Well, because this is how he takes down the house of Edom, by making them fight against each other, and ultimately then letting the other nations come upon them and bring them down, and ultimately these Edomites being finished off by the Messiah when he returns, and then getting put into captivity for 1,000 years, and then after that they go extinct. This is Luke 12 and 49. I am come to send fire on the earth, and what will I, if it be already kindled? So as the Messiah, Yahweh Shai, which is Hebrew for He is salvation, which is the true biblical name of so-called Jesus, as he said here, when he returns, which we know is very soon, the world will be in a disastrous state, in a state of spiritual fire. Basically, everybody's going to be fighting against each other. There's going to be wars going on. It's going to be total chaos, like what we're seeing now. But I'm pretty sure, I can pretty much guarantee it, it's only going to intensify from here on out until the Messiah returns. So either way, Akim, hopefully this video was edifying. I thought it was really important to bring out history like this that reveals these Edomites for what they're doing. So either way, until the next time, let's go and give all honor and glory and praises to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem Kodash. Shalom.